evening, I'm Diane in Hong Kong and you're watching ViuTV News. Coming up on tonight's show. A traffic accident in West Kowloon leaves 2 dead and more than a dozen injured. Hong Kong delegates talk up the importance of nurturing youth on the sidelines of the annual 2 sessions in Beijing. And Meng Wanzhou's lawyers are now suing Canada, claiming the Huawei CFO was illegally detained last December. Well, first up tonight, the police are investigating the cause of a deadly traffic accident in West Kowloon this morning. A city bus rear-ended a lorry that had stopped with its tailgate down in the middle of a highway. Both drivers were killed and at least 16 people were injured. Ryan Chang reports.
A scene of carnage on the West Kowloon Highway this morning. A double-decker bus smashed into the back of a lorry that had broken down in the middle of the road. Dash camera footage showed the moments before the accident when the lorry driver dropped his tailgate and sprinkled items on the road to warn other drivers. Then a city bus heading for the Western Harbour crossing failed to brake in time, rear-ending the lorry. The bus driver was pronounced dead at the scene. The other driver died after being taken to hospital. Police are investigating when and how the lorry malfunctioned, but they say its driver took unnecessary risks by parking in the middle of the road.
We will strongly advise all drivers or road users, if they encounter similar situation, they should walk to the roadside and seek for help. Other than putting something on the road in order to alert anyone or still remain on the road, especially on the highway.
Police say they will also look into the 59-year-old bus driver's mental state, into how fast his vehicle was travelling. More than a dozen passengers were hospitalised for light injuries. Ryan Chang, ViuTV News.
Meanwhile, in Shau Kei Wan, more than 400 construction workers were evacuated after a huge scaffold came off a commercial block there. Part of the 20-metre-tall scaffold blocked the westbound lane of the Island East Corridor. A section of the expressway had to be cordoned off. The incident happened at around 9 a.m. on A Kung Ngam Village Road. The scaffold began to shift when workers were trying to remove it. One man suffered light injuries after being thrown off from a spot 5 meters high. An investigation is now underway. Now, the country's top political advisory body continued to meet in the capital today. Deputies from Hong Kong and Macau have been meeting all day to discuss issues concerning the 2 special administrative regions. Now, our reporter Lydia Sung now joins us in the studio for more on this. Lydia, so youth development appeared to be a major focus today. What's the deal behind that?
Well, yes, indeed. From what we heard from the CPPCC chairman yesterday, youth development is really a big part of Beijing's determination to shut down any talk of independence here. Yesterday, we reported that Wang Yang gave a special mention to efforts fighting independence in Hong Kong. Apart from a big pat on the back, he also asked both Hong Kong and Macau to bring young people together and implement the Greater Bay Area blueprint thoroughly. So today, when the local deputies met on their own, much of the meeting was really echoing what he said. One of them, DAB's Starry Lee, suggests forming a panel of advisors among the deputies themselves to look into the Bay Area development. And she also highlighted the importance of youth exchange, saying some young people in the past were affected by a negative portrayal of the country, and that's what deterred them from visiting the mainland. So in the meeting, Lee said more should be done to enhance young people's understanding of the country and make it easier for them to work in the GBA.
Right. Now, we also know that Vice Premier Han Zheng met with these local deputies as well. So what were they really talking about today?
Well, yes, indeed. They met in a separate meeting. In fact, this is the first time Han is meeting these local deputies during the annual 2 sessions since he became the leader of the Central Coordination Group on Hong Kong and Macau affairs. Among those attending were the former chief of the WHO, Margaret Chan, who is now a CPPCC Standing Committee member. She said something rather different. She talked about how Hong Kong has a special role in national diplomacy and that the 2 SARs still have irreplaceable functions in the country's reform and opening up. For now, though, we know that the meeting was largely about the Greater Bay Area development and that we'll keep an eye on what's coming out of Beijing then.
All right, thanks very much for that, Lydia Song with us. Back in Hong Kong, officials are continuing to give out more details on the budget policies. Welfare Secretary Law Shi Kwong says there's no way he can consult all the district councils over the contentious new plan to spend $20 billion on buying private property for care facilities. On a radio show, he said that would just take too long and defeat the purpose of the measure to fill the urgent lack of such facilities. But Law added that while the idea is to complete the purchases within 3 years, he won't do any desperate shopping just to meet the deadline. In healthcare, Secretary for Food and Health Sophia Chan said she hears the cries of frontline workers about too many meetings. Also on radio today, she said the hospital authority will have to review their administrative efficiency and is hoping for a report within this year. Chan also said her team will be announcing which operator won the bid to run the new Kwai Tsing District Health Centre as early as this week. She expects it to begin service in the third quarter of the year, aiming to help the community prevent and manage chronic diseases and lower the need for hospitalization. Meanwhile, as part of his push to develop technology and innovation, the finance chief says he'll consider investing in local tech startups with the Future Fund. Paul Chan explained that would be one way to adjust the fund's investment strategy and portfolio, as he set out to do in this year's budget. This fund was introduced in 2016 to help Hong Kong save up for challenges in the longer term. Chan also noted the fund's long-term growth portfolio made as much as 13% return over 2.5 years. So he plans to ask the Monetary Authority to make it 60% of the fund, up from the current 50%. All right, coming up next, the latest from the world of business. Well, China and the US appear to be close to striking a deal that would roll back American tariffs on at least $200 billion worth of Chinese goods. That's according to sources who also say Beijing is making pledges on structural economic changes and scrapping tit-for-tat tariffs on US goods. National People's Congress spokesman Zhang Ye-sui today described the progress as substantive and well-received in both countries. American media, meanwhile, have reported that Donald Trump and Xi Jinping could seal a formal trade deal at a summit around March the 27th, given the progress in talks between the two sides. Well, that news gave markets in the region a big boost. The Hang Seng surged almost 1.5% around noon, hitting its highest since June last year. Gains pared back later in the day, but the benchmark index still closed 0.5% higher to end at nearly 28,960 points. Strong showing on the Shanghai Composite as well, with the index rising 1.12% at 3,027 points. Well, Huawei's chief financial officer Meng Wanzhou is suing the Canadian government over her arrest in December. It comes as she's due to appear in a Vancouver court this week after Ottawa approved her extradition proceedings. Our mainland correspondent Samantha Vardas has the details from Beijing.
Well, Meng Wanzhou's lawyers are suing the Canadian government as well as its border agency and the federal police. They allege she was detained, searched and interrogated for 3 hours in violation of her constitutional rights. Of course, Meng was arrested in Vancouver in December at the request of the US. She's been charged with bank and wire fraud linked to breaches of American sanctions against Iran. Now, Meng's lawyers have said the manner in which officers got evidence and information from her represented serious rights violations, adding that Canada's federal police only carried out its arrest warrant 3 hours after she was unlawfully detained at the airport. Now, the lawsuit alleges that Meng was directed to surrender all her electronic devices, computers and passwords, and that she had her luggage searched in breach of the right to privacy. Now, Meng is due to appear in a Vancouver court this Wednesday. That's when a date will be set for her extradition hearing. Now, the move by Canada to press ahead with this has been met by criticism from Beijing, which has once again demanded her release.
Well, over in the UK, fears are deepening that the country will crash out of the EU at the end of this month. So far, no Brexit deal has been reached in Parliament, meaning many businesses at home and across the English Channel are preparing for the worst. As Francis Maguire reports, French dairy firms in particular are sounding the alarm on possible transport disruptions.
The threat of a no-deal Brexit looms for business in Britain and in France. One industry that faces major disruption is dairy. 40% of French yoghurt and 10% of its cheese goes to Britain, with which France has an estimated €600 million trade surplus for dairy. That relies on easy transit at French ports and shared food safety laws. In the event of a disorderly Brexit, French business heads have called on their government to waive administrative barriers to stop perishable goods being held up at French ports. But the head of France's largest dairy cooperative believes the industry isn't ready for a no-deal Brexit.
Today, the structures to deal with the trade flows and exports aren't ready. So clearly, if there were an abrupt departure, it would have a very, very difficult impact for several months.
The French government says it has taken steps to prepare for no deal, and the agricultural minister said tougher border checks wouldn't be imposed overnight, as the two countries have a pre-existing relationship of trust. But the head of the Union of Milk Manufacturers wants more reassurances that masses of new paperwork won't be needed.
If we had to apply the rules for third parties to the letter, it would have a dramatic logistical impact on product flow and the documents that go with the products.
For now, Moreau's response to worried firms is to check their website, where info about post-Brexit procedures will be posted when, he says, the organisation has it.
Well, time for a break now, but do stay with us. A fierce battle to drive out Islamic State from Syria, but the group's militants aren't going down without a fight. That's up next.
It's hard to get a date, let alone people with challenging conditions.
You don't want love. Everyone wants love. Everyone wants to go out and find love.
From a doctor with dwarfism, to a young man with Tourette's, to an office worker with Down syndrome. Follow them all on their quest to find love.
I didn't feel I could be loved, because I haven't had that.
Your favourite guilty pleasure show is here. The Undateables, tonight at 10:30 on View TV 6.